Future Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Recently I've been doing a bunch of my end of year lists of different categories, top 10 strategy games, top 5 card games, and so on and so forth. I've also recently done best games of certain categories. But today I'm giving you my absolute, regardless of type of game, my top 10 best games of the year, where I will be revealing my number 1 best game of the year as well. Here we go. Let's get started.
Number 10.
Here we have Lords of Baseball. This is a longer Euro economic game based on the old times of baseball, way back in the days. In this game, you're going to be building your farm system. You're going to be building up your stadium. You're going to be building up your prospects. Sometimes you're going to be trading prospects for stars. Sometimes stars for regular players. You're going to be building up your media box, or maybe your stands, or maybe your concessions, and there's different strategies in that. You're going to be picking and drafting through cards, but you're also going to be simulating back in those days, I think it was 140 something games of seasons by rolling dice and playing cards with other players. It plays a lot of players at a time as well. It's a longer game. It's a good 3-hour game if you're playing even just the medium game, which you should at least play. And the game it's fantastic. It's unique. It has a theme that I love, and it has some economics in it that's very interesting, and it does simulate baseball in a weird way very quickly as well. Quickly in the fact that like the simulation, you simulate 11 games in like 2 minutes, which is kind of interesting. But the rest of it is all about economy. If you like economic Euro games, and you don't mind baseball theme, this is one to check out. If you like baseball and you like Euro games, this is a no-brainer. Lords of Baseball.
Number 9.
This next one is a re-implementation of one of my favorite games of all time, Power Grid. This is Power Grid Outpost. This is where Freeman Freeze, the mad scientist, took an older game from the 90s that he loved called Outpost and merged it with Power Grid, and here you have it. I've done a full review of this and actually did a comparison with the original Power Grid. So I've done 2 videos on this. Check them out on my channel. But essentially, it's very much like Power Grid, but it is a standalone game. It's not an expansion. Very much like Power Grid, but at the same time, it's got some huge differences as well. Watch my videos to see why, but you're not just purchasing Power Grids now. You're purchasing technologies when you auction for special abilities. You're purchasing shelters that are going to hold your workers so that they can more efficiently run your power plants, almost like Power Grid Factory Manager that he came out with many years ago. So he took like bits and pieces of some of his other games and put it in here. It's still got the network building of Power Grid. It's still got the economy of Power Grid. The auctions are similar, but now you're auctioning three different types of cards. There's no more like lots of different resources. It's just workers you're fighting over. So it's a very interesting twist on Power Grid, but still feeling very different, but then very familiar at the same time. Power Grid Outpost. Check out my review for why.
Number 8.
All right, this one is Landmarks. Now this game, check out my review of this on my channel because I kind of called it possibly a Codenames killer. It's not really because I love Codenames to death, but it might be for some. Because this game can be played both cooperatively or team-based. Now I recommend playing it cooperatively first because it's easier to teach, but the team game is the better version in my opinion. Now in this game, there's a map out there, and it starts seeded with 3 words. And then on your turn, you as the clue giver, you're trying to get your team to find the treasures on the map. They don't know where they are, but you do. So you're giving them a 1-word clue on a hex, and you give it to them. They're trying to figure out where on the map do you want them to go. And they're going to do that by looking at the word and seeing which word or words does it kind of go with. Sometimes you want it to be with just 1 word, so you make it be like something that matches that, but doesn't match anything that's around it. Other times you're like, I want them to put it next to these 2 words. So you come up with a word that has to do with both of those things. Sometimes 3 of these things. And you're trying to basically guide them to certain spots to get the treasures. But there's also bad things that can happen. You can step in traps, you can get cursed, you can end the game that way. In the team-based game, you're trying to get them to treasures that are just yours. But there's also neutral treasures that by accident you might give them to the other team. You know, it's interesting. It's a very unique game. it was similar to a game that came out a few years ago called Mystic Paths, which I thought was very interesting, but in the end it was just too long and too convoluted. This is a much more streamlined sort of implementation of that. But if you like Codenames and you want something that's similar but still feels very different, Landmarks is just absolutely fantastic.
Number 7.
So here we have a re-implementation of an older game. It's called Seven Wonders Duel by Antoine Bowser and my favorite co-designer, Bruno Cathala. But in this case, it's not just a reskin of the old Seven Wonders Duel. Yes, it's rethemed as Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle Earth, but they have re-streamlined and they've changed the game a lot. This game took everything that Seven Wonders Duel did and does it better. They do it in a theme that more people will like. I don't really care much about the theme. I've done a full review and a full playthrough of this game to check out on my channel if you want to learn more about how this is different from Seven Wonders Duel. But it is a much better, much more streamlined, much more tense game than the original Seven Wonders Duel, where you're uncovering cards and you're trying to figure out which cards do you want to be able to uncover for your opponents, which ones do you not want them to see. All immediate win conditions. There's no scoring in this game. Like, you're going to win or not. There's a tiebreaker if that happens. That doesn't happen very often. But they made Seven Wonders Duel better, more tense, more streamlined, and wow, is it amazing. If you like Seven Wonders Duel, this is a no-brainer. If you didn't, it might be one you still want to check out because it's different enough. It's not just a reskin. It was a very different game. Fantastic Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle Earth.
Number 6.
Next one is Rainbow. This is a fantastic sort of ladder climbing card game. Beautiful, vibrant rainbow colors in this game. This game is like ladder climbing and forced sale meets. Because in this game, you're going to be playing a single card, or you're going to be playing a run or a set of cards, like 3 5s, for example. Other players, they don't have to just always beat you. They can just throw out a single card or maybe another 3 2s, for example, and maybe not even win. What you're trying to do is the winner's going to have first choice of the scoring cards that are out there each round. And the big twist in this game is that all the cards that are played in a round, they tell you who's going to score. But all of the cards that you played that round are the ones that you're fighting over for scoring the next round. And so you can set yourself up to win better cards. The nuances in this game are hard to tell you in 1 minute, but I've done a full review of this game. This game is special. It's a small box, tiny little card game that, again, it has that ladder climbing abilities, but very much feels like For Sale, where you're trying to slot yourself in to a certain spot because maybe there's only one great card and the rest of the scoring aren't that great. Well, maybe you want to slough that round, not play very good. Maybe there's 2 great cards. Can you get in there? Do you really want to fight this time? It's like the second half of For Sale. Very unique game, quick and easy to teach, tons of depth, lots of fun. And really, everyone I played this with has really loved it. And if you like ladder climbing games and you want that little twist that's going to be easy to teach to non-gamers, but still has enough going on that gamers love it too, that's Rainbow.
Number 5.
This next one is a deduction game called Chronologic. There's 3 of them coming out. The first one is called Paris, Chronologic Paris. This game is a pure deduction game where you're learning about where people are, which rooms there are, and who the murderer is. There's 3 different main chapters or scenarios, and each of those scenarios have 5 cases. And so you're going to be trying to figure out who the murderer is and where they murdered him at what hour. This game has it's basically some logic based on maps and rooms and where people were at certain times. If you've ever played a game called Awkward Guests, this game has similar style deduction skills, but in my opinion, a much better way of getting the information. In other words, I'm not just giving you a card that I already know that you've seen before. Haha, big fun. In this case, you're actually just asking about certain things. You're trying to find out, you learn some secret information that nobody else knows, but then you're also telling everybody else out some other information that's less useful for everybody. So you're always getting information on everyone's turn, but on your turn you get 2 pieces of information, one secret. And over the course of the game, you're trying to find out where was somebody, where were they not, where did they move to, where did they move from, what hour were they here, what hour were they there, what hour was the murder. And again, there's I think a total 15 different games. 3 different main cases and then different scenarios of each of them. So if you like pure deduction games, but you don't want necessarily a logic puzzle spreadsheety grid, but you want more of hey, hey, this person couldn't be in this room because they were in this room 2 hours ago and they can only move one room at a time type of thing. It's more of a spatial deduction game. That's chronologic.
Number 4.
Is a game that came out later in this year that I've absolutely fallen in love with. It's called Tower Up. This game is kind of like a cross between the old classic game Manhattan, which was like an area control building towers up in levels. It's sort of a Ticket to Ride where you're taking cards or playing cards. So in this game, you're building towers. You're either taking a card and getting some blocks most of the time, or you're placing those blocks. When you're placing blocks, you're building towers. But you're building towers in a way that's very interesting, where you build a tower and you have to also build towers that are adjacent to where you're building. So you have to make sure you have the right blocks to go in certain areas. But you're trying to do this for different goals. If you get your piece as a roof on top, you're going to be able to score for how many roofs you have on top at the end. But other players might overbuild on top of you, right? So you want to find the right time to do it, not too early in the game. There's all different ways of scoring that will change each game. You're trying to maybe build the highest or the most highest ones, or maybe you're trying to build in the 5 different neighborhoods, or maybe you're trying to build next to the parks. All different ways to score. The mechanisms in this game are so easy. Draft a card and get blocks or place blocks. But with that being said, there's a lot of depth of being able to say where you're going to build, how you're going to build, when are you going to build, and actually forcing yourself to be able to sort of back yourself into a corner on purpose to make sure that you end up with some of the goals at the end. It's a very good game. It's amazing. I've done a full review of this game, so check out my channel for it. If you like sort of building 3-dimensional towers, having it look cool, having a lot of strategy and a lot of depth to a game that mechanically is pretty simple, and having lots of replayability. That's why this game is amazing, and that is Tower Up.
Number 3.
Is a 2-player card game called Compile. This game really wowed me. I've done a full review of this right after Gen Con. I was one of the first to review this game. So you can check that out. This is a 2-player card game. It's a hacker theme. Basically, you have 3 columns. You're trying to get to the number 10 or higher on a column. Basically, it's a protocol. And when you do, you can compile that and you flip it over. If you're the first to do that for all 3 of the protocols on your side, you win. But there's so many nuances to this game because each of the cards, there are these little decks. It's almost like Smash Up, where you get 3 different decks at the beginning of the game, you shuffle them all together, and that's your thing. You actually, I think if I did the math right, there's 220 different possible combinations of the decks in the base game, which is main 1. If you add the 3 from the little promo expansion pack, there's like 455 different combinations of the 3 different protocols that you can match up. So you're always comboing together different abilities from different decks. And there's lots of nuances here where you can flip cards over, you can unflip cards, you can slide cards over. And anytime a card is either revealed, flipped over so you can see it, or is uncovered because another card moved, its ability reactivates again. So you can chain together some really interesting combos. It's just an amazing game. Go watch my full review of this to really understand the nuances of what I'm talking about. Simple card game, tons of depth, lots of expandability. It looks really cool. I know Shut Up and Sit Down reviewed this heavily. The game is actually sold out right now. The publisher said they should be getting in more second printing of it sometime in January. I think you can be, yeah, it's amazing.
Number 2.
All right, here we have Fromage. This is an amazing strategy game that it does something that I love in strategy games. It packs a heavyweight punch in a short 1 hour or less time frame. With an easy teach, enough that if the game happens to sit on the shelf for a few months and you take it out and you want to teach it again, you're not going to have to reread through the whole entire rule book. There's a few games in the past that have done this, like Evergreen from Horrible Guild, or Rainer Knizia's Witchstone. These games that they're 45 minutes to an hour, but when you're done, you're like, whoa, every turn was just super thinky. My brain feels tired. I feel like I've played a 90-minute game or a 2-hour game in a good way, but it only took me half the time. I love games that do that. Fromage does that to a T. Such an interesting worker placement, simultaneous worker placement game. That's what allows it to do this, is that you're placing workers But depending on how you place them, they are not going to be available to you in 1, 2, or 3 turns. The better action you took, the longer it's going to take to get them back. You're trying to age cheese, and then you're trying to essentially create cheese and age cheese and create cheese in different sort of parts of the board. The board's going to be spinning between each turn. Everyone grabs their workers, you put them out. Each of the boards is its own unique mini game that scores in a different way. They also now have announced a standalone expansion to this, which basically doubled the amount of boards that you can play on and interchange them as well. I've actually played that. It's amazing as well. Wow, the game is fantastic. Quick teach, tons of depth, ridiculous amounts of planning and brain just almost bleeding because it makes you think so hard and think in advance. But the mechanisms are easy and just everything is streamlined. That's why this game is so amazing. Fromage.
Number 1.
All right, my game of the year, number 1. It actually won my most immersive game of the year award in my previous video. It is Intent to Kill. Now, I must apologize up front. This game is very hard to find because it doesn't yet, at the time of filming this, does not yet have full global distribution yet. It came out through Hobby World, which is a Russian publisher. They had it for sale at some of the conventions here, like Origins and Gen Con. And then I think Arcane Wonders sold some of their leftover stock after Gen Con. But they don't yet have a lot of distribution, so you probably are not going to be able to find this until sometime next year. I apologize for that. This is a hidden movement game where one player or players play the murderer, and one player or players play the investigators. I'm going to say this right up front. This is a 2-player game. Sure, you could play it with more. If you are going to play it with 3, have one player be the murderer and 2 be the ones talking about it. I still think these types of games are always best one-on-one, 2-player. You can play it with up to 4 players. 2's the best, 3 maybe. Now what you're trying to do in this game is the murderer is trying to murder people, and they have to do this following a motive. And they have these certain motives. And by the way, the motives that are in each game can change. So each game you might have to play a little bit differently. Each game has a randomized map of people, and these people come from different social groups. The map is randomized every game, and which characters are in the game, and how many of each social group is randomized each game. And you're moving around, murdering people that fits your secret motive, where the investigators are trying to see who was murdered. They can always see who was murdered, and they're trying to narrow down the point of, well, it couldn't have been this motive, couldn't have been this motive, it could be these 3. And so they're trying to manipulate the board in a way to make it so they can figure out what motive they are, but they also need to find you, the murderer. And they do this by narrowing it down, by learning who you aren't, because they're going to be questioning people out on the board. The murderer's going to be giving answers to their age group. Are they in their 20s, 30s, 40s? Are they male or female? What's their body type? But another big twist is the murderer can lie. Also, there's a social group that the murderer is tied to that any one question from that murder group can also lie. So the investigators are learning information, but they got to know that at some point some of these might not be true, and you're trying to link those together. It is amazing. It brings me back to like the days of like Mr. Jack, which Mr. Jack in New York is like my second favorite game of all time. The bluffing, the double bluffing, I think they know this, so I'm going to do that. The abstract movement of things going around. It's fantastic. The game has a base game and an advanced game. The advanced game adds a lot of cards, adds a lot more abilities and such, but I also think it adds a lot of unneeded chaos that I don't like in my hidden movement games. There's already enough chaos with the possible lying. I like just the base game. There's also like 5 or 6 different built-in maps that you can build and scenarios that slightly change the rules if you want to. But quite honestly, just playing the base game with the standardized map gives tons of replayability because the randomized characters and the different motives that you can use. If you like hidden movement, if you like stress as the murderer, or you like deduction as investigators, this game's amazing. I just hope, please Hobby World, please Arcane Wonders pick it up, I guess. Somebody pick this game up and give it some global distribution because it is fantastic. Intent to Kill. Well, there you have it. There's my top 10 of 2024. Feel free to go back and look through. I've done 6 other videos of the best games of all these different categories. Top 10 strategy games, top 10 fantasy games, top 5 party games, things like that. Go check those out. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. This is the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games, and helping you the next one you love. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and their 4.5 Kickstarter introduced the new Galactic Minecraft and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. The campaign recently ended, but it's not too late to pledge late at GameToppersLLC.com.